money?
No, I guess not. Yeah. So like the big thing would just be like once, but especially since we're remote right now, we don't necessarily like have rent or anything that we're paying,
Mhm.
and we can organically grow right now. I guess it's more just like we can't really do experiments or like test things or try new things that would
Mhm.
involve any capital because we have like a limited amount. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so that's something where it's like Paul Graham's been tweeting at people recently where he's just like, become profitable, like
yeah,
build something lean and become profitable. And like, to me, that's always been my goal of all this too, is it's like, I just want something that I can like sit around and like still make money. Like
yeah,
passive income is a super important thing. But it's like, if I can step away for a week or two and Nomad Rides is producing profit, it's like, I did my job then. And then if you get to that point, then you don't need to lean on investors, and you don't need to, in times like this, where um, where the economy downturns, it doesn't affect you because you're super lean and you're profitable.
yeah. Makes sense. I think people are starting to join.
Cool. So can they hear this conversation?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. It's learning for them as well.
How many people do you expect to be on this?
Probably around like somewhere between 20 to 30. So we have 13 teams, with sizes ranging from like like 1 to 4 people.
Uh-huh.
I think a majority will be attending. So
Cool.
yeah, still early. Yeah, basically like what the format will be. So for like the first hour, it'll just be sort of like you talking. The group's like good at asking questions, so people will probably like either chat. I don't know the best way over Zoom, but either like chat questions or questions for the first hour like as a group, and
Uh-huh.
then for like the next part, which would probably be like a little bit more than an hour, like it would be like breakout rooms where you would talk to like each team sort of one on one. So like it would like split you up based off of for each team, and then they would just like talk to you specific questions, I guess. Because that's been super valuable to them, just be able to talk to someone going through the process, just like one on one, so they can ask specific questions that apply to their business.
Mhm.
Um,
Have you done it one of these over Zoom yet, or is this
no,
the first?
you're the first. Because before spring break, we still had people coming in. We had like one or two video calls, but then they would do like one-on-ones like separately like after the program, or we'd have like another speaker that would come in for like one-on-ones.
Gotcha.
First
And is the Foundry, is that like a completely student run thing? Like, are
yeah,
you in charge of it, or?
so this isn't the Foundry, this is the Anvil, which is like the student corollary to the Foundry. um
Gotcha.
and then yeah, we have a leadership team. I'm one of the people like involved, and then we have a few other people that will be on the call that like run it. And then it's sponsored by like groups like the Foundries. The Foundries like the university extension, so it's like staff and stuff like that.
Yeah. Does Mitch get involved at all?
So he came to a big call out we had. So we did this call out of call outs last year where it was like all entrepreneurship organizations coming together. We had like
Uh-huh.
500 people attend. It was like a pretty big event, and he came and spoke there.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, but
I'm a huge fan of Mitch. I love Mitch.
really, yeah, I know, he's a dope guy. He's done well.
Yeah.
I've been handling everything right now as well.
Yeah. Super smart. I listened to a really good podcast of him talking about just his time as governor and stuff like that. And I was like, you're awesome.
Yeah, I know, it's so cool.
And I get jealous of Matt Painter and Jeff Brom, but that's beside the point.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was decent in the beginning of the season this year, right?
They
For
always are. They always come out with their
yeah,
great athletes at the beginning of the season. And we're like, oh, we're going to be like a top five team. And then it's like, wait, we have no discipline and we don't listen to our coach. That doesn't help.
yeah. And I was kind of bummed about Romeo Langford's college season. Just, I mean, I
Yeah.
guess he only really sucked against Purdue, but I thought he was going to be like super good when he came to Mackey, and then
Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. So is everybody else going to have their videos on during this? I've seen some of these social
You
media
want to
where
have
I
your
think
videos on? You don't have to. They can hear us.
I feel like I'll be talking to a bunch of ghosts.
Let's turn your. Oh, okay, yeah, they're turning their videos on. I think they're waving.
How do I is there a way to go into a view where I see everybody in the group?
Yeah, I think on the top right you can change the view to either gallery view or speaker view. So if you can only see their heads on the top right now, that means you're in gallery view. And then if you press that button again, you should see everyone. Or you'll see like, yeah, I think you'll see everyone.
Well, does that change for me because I'm on the desktop? Like I'm just joined by browser.
No, actually maybe. Like I can see everyone because I changed the view. Let's see.
We'll just roll with it. I can't seem to figure it out either. I think I might have to download Zoom for that to work, which would make sense.
All right, okay. I think people will slowly join, but since it's past 12, I'll just explain to everyone how we're gonna try to do this. It's our first time doing a session fully virtual. So yeah, I give you all a background a little bit about Michael over Slack, but for the first hour, it'll sort of be like the typical like fireside chat. I mean, Michael will basically just like introduce himself, and then any of you can ask questions like whenever. And then after like that first hour, we have a conversation. We'll try to do like breakout sessions. Pete is looking into like actually making like specific rooms per team, but if not, it'll just be more casual where like a specific team can just like ask whatever questions they have for Michael for like 10 minutes, and then Pete will post the schedule in the we'll post the schedule in the participant Slack. But yeah, Michael, I think it's because you're on the web browser. You probably don't have the same functionality.
That would make sense. I might try that when we get a break or something. Yeah, thanks for having me. I was excited to do this in person. So a little disappointing that what's happening in the world right now. But my name is Michael McHugh. I'm a graduate of Indiana University. I graduated from IU in 2018 with a degree in finance. Was born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. So still have some friends who are seniors at Purdue right now. And a lot of my good friends as well went to Purdue. I am the founder of Nomad Rides. So we are the first commission-free rideshare platform. So where Uber and Lyft take up to a 40% commission off the rides, we don't take anything. So passengers save 20% more, and drivers are able to earn 20% more. And so the common question from there is like, well, how do you guys make money? So we monetize off of a monthly driver subscription. And so we're operating right now at Indiana University. We started the first version of the rideshare company when I was a senior at IU, and we had just expanded before spring break, or actually maybe more of a month ago, to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And me and Akash had met. I think you had reached out because through IC stuff.
Yeah.
So, and maybe we'll wait to get into that. But yeah, so thanks for having me.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, just to start off, so I'd love for you to share, like, you talked about how you started the initial version of Nomad Rides when you were in college, just talking more about that experience, like the traction you saw, and then how that sort of led you to want to continue building it.
So I was thinking what I might do is actually go all the way back with this to the start of like our first startup that we had.
Yeah, that'd be
Because
better.
that kind of would give proper perspective as to like how long the grind was, and help any of you too with where you were at in your position. So our first startup actually, so I have a co-founder as well. His name's Daniel Jones, like smartest guy you'll ever meet, amazing developer. And so every startup that I've basically worked on has been Daniel and I. The first one was actually, it was named Gigio. And so it was like the first kind of entry for me into the gig space of, and so that was when I was a junior in college. We had another co-founder as well, who was a good friend, who worked on it with us. The whole concept was, hey, and so I was a part of a fraternity at IU, and what became apparent to me during that time was there's a very obvious gap in the the people in a fraternity, or so to speak, who had excess money, and they wanted more time on their hands than there was folks like me. Like I was paying my way through school, and so it was super, like you could do miscellaneous tasks, and people would pay you to do them. So to keep it like the PG version is like doing people's laundry, or like helping tutor somebody in calculus or anything like that. So that was kind of the birthplace of our thought process in Gigio. And so that was an app-based platform. And the concept was people would create a profile, you would message them, be like, hey, can you do my laundry? And that's when we kind of learned how difficult it is to get users and to get people to use an app. It's not as simple as people think. And so we were working on that for a while and just fighting tooth and nail to get users. And eventually that is what gave birth to the Milk Movers. So the Milk Movers was it's a milk delivery service that we had started. So we put on cow costumes and deliver people milk to their doorsteps. And so we just cost. So we were just doing it for like, it was like $3. You could order milk and we would deliver it to you. So that was like my first kind of introduction to like viral growth, which was like super fun time. We had one video posted to Facebook that got like 13 million views. And it was just really crazy. But that was kind of the first just like introduction to startup world, the first introduction to like building something that completely didn't exist. And yeah, and so that was kind of my initial startup phase, my junior year. Going into my senior year, I was like, no startups. Like I'd burnt myself out with Milk Movers. Like delivering milk for $3 is not very fun when you're putting on the same cow costume over and over again. And so my senior year, I was basically like, that sucked. Like I don't want to do that anymore, which worked for like a few months going into the year. And then Daniel and I both got restless. And at that time, he had gone back to school, and he was at Brown in Providence, but had decided that he was going to drop out again to go work at coding job in California. And so he went out there, He actually moved into his van. That's where the term nomad came into existence. But he but that was kind of a split for us as we were like, do we want to work full time? He was like, no, I'm going to do this. And so we just kind of stopped. And that's where B-Town Rides was born. So Daniel had then moved out to California. We had another, someone approach us about they wanted to start a company in Bloomington. And they had known us from our work with Gig and Milk Movers. And we were like, well, we've always had this idea of commission-free rideshare, but we've never actually tried it. And so and our new partner, then he was like a very persistent guy. And so we were just like, okay, fine. Like I was sitting there with him and I was like, okay, like let's start this company then. Like, what would you call rideshare service? Or like something to order rides. And I was like, how about B-Town Rides? We sat there and we made a flyer just on Canva that was like a phone number, text this number, need ride, and we'll pick you up and drop you off for $5. And so that was the onset of B-Town Rides. That first night we were like, hey, like here's the flyer, like go get people to use this, because we were like, this is so hard, you won't be able to. And it turned out we had like 30 rides that night. And it was just like, oh crap, like people actually want to use this. So we spun up an app, and that was kind of the birthplace of the rideshare business, and we've taken it from there. So yeah, I figured that would be a good time to kind of like stop. I feel like I talked for a while there. So do you have any questions or yeah?
So yeah, going to like with B-Town Rides, how you saw that initial traction with like 30 rides and like the first night itself, like did you do any specific marketing that like helped you get there, or was there anything that you attribute that success to?
I attributed most all that success to our partner. His name is Asher, and he's just a little spitfire and a hell of a salesman. And so we gave him that flyer, and he was in a fraternity at IU. And we were just like, go tell people about this, like get people to use this. And so he just like every group me he was in, every person he knew, he was just telling them about it, telling them about it, telling them about it. And like to a point where his friends would refer to it as Asher Rides. And so it's just like, yeah, it was mainly all attributed to him in that early stages. He had also found a way after those initial 30 rides, we were like, okay, this is something that works. We should find something to get the word out on this more. Like once we had an app built. And so he would get on. Do you guys use Canvas at Purdue?
No.
What do you guys use for like where you can submit quizzes and they organize your classes?
No. Blackboard.
Blackboard. Yeah. So like your version of Blackboard is IU uses Canvas. And so he would basically get on. First, he started with like his own class. He found a way to message every person in his class off of his Canvas account. And so he would just blast to everybody in his class. And then he took my Canvas login and did it on my classes. And then he did that with all of his. So he basically and he got a little bit of trouble for that, but it was like, hey, we got the word out about B-Town Rides and got ourselves to like 2,000 users. So it was a huge net positive.
And then just like with these like early experiences like during college and stuff like that, like what were your key takeaways about like getting traction, sort of balancing it with school, etc.?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thinking back onto it in college, one of the biggest things is I've always felt like I probably wasn't fulfilled completely with just like my coursework and the social scene that college presented. So it was always to me like I needed to be doing something more. And so it was very helpful for me to have something like that it was like you could keep working on. Like for me, I can only study so much. Like there's the subjects that I really care about and I would enjoy studying for those. And there are other classes where it's like, I don't mind getting a B in this class. Um, but the big thing I've learned, especially like, and I'm still learning it, um, is this is something that like is meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyable. It's meant to be like you're doing this with other really smart people. Um, it's meant to be fun. So like enjoying that process of like building something, having fun with it, with your marketing, with your product building, with your like I've given a ton of rides just driving rideshare myself now. And so it's like just enjoying that process and having fun with it.
So I guess after B-Town rides, like launch is going well, like what were the next steps to get you to where you are today?
Yeah. Um, so B-Town rides, we had, so that was like conflict arose after B-Town rides. So our plan was to change the name to Hoosier Rides because we felt that um, the name, like the hometown name, was a really helpful thing because it just resonated with people. Um, and so we had switched the name to Hoosier Rides. We were going to expand to Indianapolis that summer, and that's when we kind of learned the whole insurance barrier of that exists in rideshare that we had just been ignoring. So we were really operating illegally up until that point, like not providing commercial insurance for our drivers. Um, but we also weren't touching the actual payment. So to us, it wasn't like a huge deal. But so from there, I had an offer to work at Cluster Truck in Indianapolis and join the Orr Fellowship program. So if any of you guys are familiar with that, it's a really great program focused on developing the next generation of business leaders and entrepreneurs in Indianapolis. Um, and so I had that offer to start like mid June after I graduated, and I was pretty positive that that group of people was not the right people to get on the bus to like start a company with. So I was just like, I'm gonna I'm gonna take this job and I'm gonna not go full time with this right now, which is kind of a good line in the sand for me to be like, hey, um, it was nice because there were like we weren't finding that fun. It wasn't enjoyable as much as it should have been. Um, And so I took that job with Cluster Truck and I worked there for about 8 months. So that would have been June of 2018 through February of 2019. And so I worked there for, what is that, 6, 8 months. And that's when Daniel had that August or maybe July, he had quit his job in California. He had moved home from his van back into the civilization, and he had started working full time on what we had decided on a rename of Nomad Rides. And so he started working full time on it, took it into the semester in Bloomington with the group of drivers we had and stuff. And I was working at Cluster Trucks. We just decided, hey, take the company. I'll focus on my work at Cluster Truck until kind of like the decision was made for me that I was no longer going to be working at Cluster Truck. And it was kind of like a big fork in the road for me in my life because Daniel was working on the company. It was like very much slowly dying at that point. Like we didn't have our loyal users. We didn't have people actively driving, stuff like that. And so I was laid off from Cluster Truck, and Daniel was basically like the first, like I don't know, maybe we were talking that day or something, and he was just like would not leave me alone, like absolutely would not leave me alone. And was like, Mike, like I need you to help me build this business. And with the Orr Fellowship program, they're going to be helping you get another job as well. And so Daniel was like so persistent, and there was no other companies in Indianapolis that were really like, Michael, we want you to come work for us or with us. So I was just like, fine, like looks like I'm giving this a shot. And so my biggest thing was like, okay, are we going to be able to work together fluidly? Like, are we going to be a great team? And so my kind of thing on that was like, okay, Daniel, we're going to go on a road trip together. We're going to see if we don't want to kill each other on the other end. And that was kind of the decision, the straw that broke the camel's back of like, okay, after the road trip, we were like, let's go back to Bloomington. Let's get this thing started up.
Does anyone have any like specific questions so far? Cool. I guess going more into like the like mechanics of like running Nomad rides and like where you're at today, like how did you decide upon your like business model and like tie that to sharing like a big story when you pitch Nomad rides, like whether it is at like Y Combinator to any of your investors or just like sharing what you're doing? How do you tie like your current mission to like the big picture vision that everyone wants to hear when they hear about a startup?
Mm-hmm. So what Daniel always says about our business model, like his words, which I think are great words, he always says like the commission-free model to us is sacrosanct. And like the concept of gig workers, and I've always had a huge problem with the way Uber operates their business model, where it's basically like for the marginal work a driver does, like if he works 10 more hours, Uber is also making 10 more hours worth of profit. Um, and so it's like there's a cap on how much a worker, an independent contractor, can earn, because with every additional ride that driver is taking, Uber is making additional money on that ride. And so from a business model perspective, we've just always held that as like sacrosanct. It's like we never want to make a penny off of the actual ride. We want to be a software company that builds software to drivers for them to operate their rideshare business. And so we've been through a lot in terms of like what those costs are, what that pricing is, to be able to operate everything legally. So that was like a huge thing, and we'll probably dive into why Combinator and all that stuff on a different question. But that was just like, it's a huge thing. It's something that distinguishes us from any other company, and the ability to just hold that as sacrosanct means so much to us. But like on the other end, like drivers love us because of that, users love us because of that, because it's like for a user it's like $5.50 ride in Bloomington. Like I'm sure in West Lafayette it's a similar thing of like, why the hell would you pay $8 for an Uber ride when you could pay $5.50? It's like they don't like the first thing. It's like buying an airline ticket. I hate Frontier Airlines, but I still fly on their damn planes because it's so cheap. And it's like with travel and that sort of stuff, it's like, oh, it's a no-brainer. And so we're also able to, like on that $5.50 ride, we can go to Uber drivers and be like, hey, how much are you making on this? They're going to make $1.50 minimum more per ride with us. And so it's like, it's a no-brainer from both sides of like, a user is saving money, a driver's earning more, and we as a company can actually maintain profitability if we're lean. And so we're just kind of chugging away on that, operating the business.
And what's like the vision with like how you grow the business? Because like yeah, I mean Uber and Lyft operate in like so many markets. Like how do you acquire those drivers? Is it just manual right now? Do you target like ads? Like how do you acquire both sides of the market to leave sort of their like branded solutions to use Nomad?
Yeah. So mainly it's just taking Uber rides, like taking Uber and Lyfts, and just like manually pitching drivers. Um, I think it's the name of the guy who created Walmart. I think his name's Sam Waltman. I'm gonna mess that up, or Walton. But they asked it. They were like, "How did you go from being like a $10 million company to a $10 billion company?" And he's like, "Well, I opened one market at a time. Like I opened one store at a time." And so that's our biggest thing of like, hey, let's not expand too fast. Let's expand in a manner in which we know what we're doing. We know we have customers for these drivers, where you're not giving people empty promises, and just take things like one step at a time, one market at a time.
I had a question about that particular pitch to an Uber driver. Sorry
Mm-hmm.
about that. Could you I guess do like something like a sample or talk about like what you say to the Uber driver?
Yeah, so there's actually some really smart guys out of Boston. There were two Russian guys. I think they were Russian. They started a company called Fasten, um, which was their concept was, hey, we take $1 per ride. So that was like, hey, flat commission, we only take $1. And so we call it the Fasten pitch, where it's basically like you get in an Uber ride, you have $2, like $2 cash tip, and you attach like a little note about Nomad. It's like, hey, this is what you could have made on a Nomad ride. And we're very engaged with the people after that too. Like we have, so like the house I'm sitting in right now is in Bloomington, and we have like an open door policy where we're like, hey, drivers, like just come by and ask questions, talk to us, whatever. And so after that, but the pitch is basically like, hey, like it's like, hey, I'm Michael, like I'm one of the founders of Nomad Rides. And we first off like tell them how impressed we are with the fact typically these people have 5,000-10,000 trips of people they've transported around your town. And so it's like, first off, like I saw you have a 5-star rating with 10,000 trips. That's like a super impressive thing. Like you don't meet many people who are like that devoted to one task and just are able to continually provide good service after good service after good service. So we just first, like we communicate that to them. We're like, hey, like that's super impressive. Like, hell yeah. And then we just like talk to them about that, talk to them about, and then we work Nomad into the conversation of like, yeah, like I just honest with you, like we're new to town. We run a rideshare company here. We have our biggest problem is we have way too many rides and not enough drivers. So we need more people to come on and make money. And they typically, we do this thing where we have big like car toppers is what we call them that like light up, that drivers can discount on their subscription if they put them on their car. And so we like drivers in those towns like are typically have seen those before, and they're like, oh, and so it's like they're also like happy to meet someone who's working on their behalf.
That's awesome. That's thanks for explaining that a little bit. And I just had one more question too.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot of times, like it seems like you have like a better product in the sense that they can make more money, and then like have just an overall better experience. But is there like I guess do you have to work, I guess, a bit more just because you're like a young brand and potentially like just because of your breaded product, they potentially have some reservations?
Yeah, absolutely. And like the typical, like the typical driver you're dealing with too, like they're doing 5 to 10,000 rides on Uber and repetitively doing it, typically because they're not an early adopter. They're not somebody who like goes and seeks out a new thing. And so Daniel and I always laugh too. It's like a full grown adult could not start this business because it's just like we're like kind of crazy in the way we approach these problems and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, they're very, initially people are like skeptical beyond belief because it's like something that sounds too good to be true. And so like there's Facebook groups in these towns too of like these Uber and Lyft drivers, and I get in those and I just get bullied sometimes, but it's like, it's kind of funny. It's like you're just trying to recruit drivers like with something that's better for them and better for their passengers. And it's just like, I'll tell you how it is and we're going to keep working towards it and eventually they'll come along.
Do you want to talk about like your journey to like Y Combinator and how that's helped the business and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of, so me and Akash were actually talking about this prior, in context of like fundraising and that sort of thing. So so we had worked on Nomad Rides from February. So that was the thing Daniel and I were trying to prove. We were like, okay, can we just create a ton of demand? Can we like go to Bloomington, we ourselves all we do is drive. Like, let's drive, and let's grow our user base, grow our market in Bloomington. And so we did that beyond belief. We hit 1,000 rides in 2019. And so it was just like a huge day. And I was driving to like, I think it was like 2:30 in the morning. And one of our drivers, we put everybody in a group me with our drivers. And somebody had posted in there and was like that they had gotten in a really bad car accident. And I called Daniel immediately and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, like we don't have insurance. This is something we knew. We're operating illegally right now. And we thought we were just like royally screwed. And so we had, and fortunate enough, she was a passenger in ride, and she wasn't actually driving for Nomad at that time. And she was just sharing it with the community of drivers. But we were like, that's the red flag, like wave the white flag, like shut everything down. So we shut down the whole app basically in April of last year, basically just to say, okay, we need to go fundraise money. We need to go buy commercial insurance so we can operate legally, so we can make sure drivers are properly protected, because they didn't know the type of risk and liability they were taking on. And so we stopped all operations and went to fundraise money. And we went through the process a lot in Indiana, reaching out to our networks of people, just anybody we knew who might have faith in us to build a big company. And we were going around and it was like fighting tooth and nail to fundraise. And eventually we had reached out to Michael Seibel, who's a partner at Y Combinator. So if anybody who's unfamiliar, Y Combinator is like the most well-known, probably #1 accelerator in the world. It's based out of like in Silicon Valley, like Mountain View area, I believe. It's companies like Stripe, Airbnb, Reddit, Dropbox. It was started by Paul Graham, who's like one of the startup gods in Silicon Valley. But we had reached out to Michael Seibel, just cold email. Daniel had a list of investors and people that he had always been like, if I started in fundraise, these are the people I should talk to. And Michael Seibel reads all of his cold emails. It's something he like puts in his Twitter bio. Kind of funny, but he responded like right away, and it was like, because Michael Seibel's thing is like, don't like waste my time. Just send me exactly what you need, and I'll respond. And so Daniel's like, hey, we started a rideshare company. It's in a college town. We have way too much demand that our servers are breaking. And he was like, and this was like May, I think, like middle May. He was like, you should apply to Y Combinator. And Daniel's like, well, the application was closed. Like, he was like, you should apply late to Y Combinator. And so we applied, filled out the application like that night and submitted it, got an interview that next week. And we're fortunate enough to get into Y Combinator, which was like just an amazing experience. Pretty awesome. Yeah. And so we were able to get into Y Combinator. That's kind of where I was taking that.
And what were like the key takeaways from the program, being in Silicon Valley versus like being at Purdue? And do you have any advice for like the teams in this call that are sort of in the early stages as well, like out of Purdue, like what they should look for as like next steps?
Yeah. So the biggest thing in terms of next steps that I always advise people on fundraising is, it's like the biggest, like we almost like got shut down by the law. Like that was our biggest impediment to like stepping up our growth, was like we legally had to stop and like do something about it. And so it's like when you're looking for money or something like that, make sure that it's like you really need the money to take yourself to the next level. Because if not, you can kind of put yourself at the mercy of investors, and you don't get to like have as much fun building a company. But yeah, the biggest thing that I always look back on being in Silicon Valley, being in Y Combinator, is just the overwhelming support that you get. the overwhelming sense of validation that you get from being around other people who have done this before, who are supportive of you, who like believe in you, who like you don't get that in the Midwest as much. It's more like laughing. It's like you can't build a company that can compete with Uber. It's like that's people's thought process. Where it's like in Silicon Valley, it's like, oh, here's an idea of a thing you can do here, and here's this, and oh, I know this person who works in insurance at this firm, and so it's a really awesome community that's out there of like just belief in young 20-year-olds that like, hey, you can do something of this magnitude. And so one thing I always emphasize of that too is like the community aspect they create there. So Paul Graham he had started it out of his house in Boston. That's how Y Combinator started. And so they would just like meet. I don't know how often they would meet, but it's basically if you were just taking a college course that overwhelmed your entire life. So like every Tuesday night they would do family style dinners where they would just like put big bowls of food all around the Y Combinator table area, and you would come and eat and hang out with other founders. And then at the end of the night, they would have a past founder from Y Combinator come and talk to everybody there. And so it's just an awesome sense of like community and validation of like, hey, this is something you can do. And it was an amazing springboard to that fundraising that we knew we needed to accomplish.
I have one question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how did investors take the fact that you are not taking any commission out of the ride? Because in the long term, if you take commission out of the ride, you're gonna make more money. If you are, I mean, depending on what you charge them, I have no idea about how much you charge the driver and all this, but I don't know. I mean, I think on the long term, investors want to make the most money out of it. So if you get a commission out of this drive, you're making more money. So let's imagine there is a huge event in Chicago, like, I don't know, like the Lollapalooza, and there are many more drives during this month due to that event. So in the end, you're gonna make an exponential growth of the revenues that in that particular city. So how investors took the fact that you're not taking any commission out of it?
Yeah, so our Y Combinator partners, so originally, that's another awesome thing about Y Combinator is they have past founders who have built companies, who have raised money, who have done all this stuff, who are assigned to your individual company, and they like advise you, and you schedule office hours with them consistently and all that stuff. But they would always laugh at us, right? They would be like, you're not gonna make any money though. And at that time too, we were like, we'll just charge $15 a month for a driver subscription. It'll all be hunky-dory and it'll be great. And they would laugh. Like Michael Seibel was one of our group partners, and he would just be like, but you guys aren't going to make any money. And he would also say, okay, well, like, what's the acceptable level of commission? Because there's a level that it's like of commission that it's like you're willing to take. Because it's like if you tier your subscription or whatever, like there's a level that you're willing to go to that you can take. And that's the thing we've just always held really fast on, is like that's sacrosanct, right? Like there is no level of commission that's acceptable. And so investors obviously held that same mentality. Like there was some really funny like investor meetings that me and Daniel went to where it's like, they're like, what? You're going to do what? But then it's like, you also have ones where you'd walk out of the meeting and they just like, it's kind of like a mic drop where they're like, whoa, like these guys are really steadfast in what they believe to be true in this marketplace. And that is something that signals great positivity to investors as well, where they're like, oh, these people, they really believe in this and they really like, they're going to make this happen. And so while there's some, like, obviously you're going to have some people who are like, oh, you're not going to make enough money, yada, yada. But it's like, the goal of building a company is to be profitable and to sustain yourself. And so it's like, if we can be a long-term company and all those things, the money will come.
I have a question too. And first of all, thank you for sharing your experience with us, Michael. So my question is, by making your product commission free, is there something technical or non-technical that you have to give up? Say like Robinhood, they make their app no commission, but then the users can't select which slot they want to sell. It uses a FIFO, first in first out way of doing that. Is there something kind of like that that you have to give up?
Sorta. So the way we think about the commission free is, so we basically, we've tiered it into two tiers, a basic model and an enterprise model, to kind of divide the drivers who are using this to earn all of their income. Like, this is their sole job. We're like, we want to divide that. We want to make you an enterprise driver. And so that we just tier that pricing model, where we priced it different for a basic model, for a basic one, and for an enterprise model. And you can't, like, on the driver side, you can't accept a ride unless you've signed up for that subscription. So that's kind of how we allow them to, like, do everything in the app until when they click accept. And so it's like a big thing where it's like, oh, I need to sign up for a subscription. So they can't accept rides and earn money unless they pay us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, Michael. Can you talk more about how you worked through some of those legal issues that you had? I know you said you were talking about, driving without insurance for a while. Like, how did you go about, like, finding out what steps you needed to take and kind of, like, what money you needed in order to, like, tackle those obstacles?
Yeah. The biggest thing with that is depending on my teammates. Like, Daniel is, like, the smartest guy I've ever met. And so it's just like he did basically all of that work. I knew, like, I'm always like, hell yeah, I'm supportive of what needs to be done. But my expertise is not, like, getting nitty gritty and understanding that stuff, like, super on a deep level. And so it's something we knew, like, hey, Uber and Lyft, like, so there's T&C law. That's one of the things I'm most familiar with. And so T&C stands for a transportation network company. And so what Uber did when they expanded is they would just launch in these cities, throw all their resources at it, acquire a bunch of drivers, acquire a bunch of users, and then they would go deal with the local government. And they would say, okay, like, we're operating here, your people obviously want this service. What do we need to do? And so now there's really clear legislation on, to be a legal rideshare provider, you have to meet these criteria. And so that was the first thing, is when I was a senior in college, I was printing off the T&C law, and I was like, okay, here's a thing we obviously do not fulfill. And one of those things was drivers have to hold a minimum of $1 million liability insurance when driving, like, a commercial vehicle. And so that was just a big, like, red flag of, like, hey, this is something we don't have. Other things were like vehicle requirements, stuff like that, which we were able to filter for in our application process. But we just knew when it came to, like, being a legal entity, we didn't fulfill that requirement. And so we had looked into, we were like, okay, first it's like, okay, well, can I call my insurance agent? Like, our insurance agent, somebody who's a family friend. It's like, hey, can I get this insurance through you? The answer to that question was no. And she was like, wait, are you driving commercially with this car? And I was like, yeah, whoops. And you just, like, I have a high risk tolerance for that sort of thing, but it's like, in the like if something bad were to happen, it'd put me in a terrible spot. But we're very fortunate in that manner. But then it's like, okay, well, then who does Uber, like, Uber's a public company, well, they are now, they weren't then, but, like, who does Uber get their insurance through? That was the next question. And it's, you just, like, kind of keep going down those lists, and it's like, okay, I can't get it through my personal insurance provider. Who does Uber get it through? can we meet somebody at that company who Uber gets it through? I think now they do their insurance in-house, but previously they went through one of those big insurance brokers. And so it's basically like, okay, then it's just a learning process like anything else. It's like keep going down the list, keep learning of more people who provide this sort of insurance, and then let's talk to them. And Y Combinator put us in a position where we had enough cash to go and buy that policy. And so we were just like, because before we had reached out to the insurance providers, and we were like, hey, like we're interested in buying this. And they're like, okay. We're like, and we don't have any money. And they were like, well, we're not even going to talk to you. And so we were like, okay, we'll come back when we do have money. And so we did.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have a question on the commission fee you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned that originally you were charging $15 per month, and I believe now you charge $25 according to your website. And so what was the process look like for you to validate the proper amount to charge drivers? And how do you use that number to project like your revenue for the next, say, 18 months? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So early on, to me, it's like pricing doesn't matter, right? Like just charge, like it was just charging something. It was like, let's just start charging something. And so we had debates internally about, okay, what should that pricing structure be? We had thought about the potential of like a daily subscription where it's like every time you check in, you have to pay. And I was just like, no. My biggest thing was like, I want to be like Netflix, where it's like you pay $15 a month. So the biggest thing with that is it's just like, just choose a number. Just choose a number you think people will pay and like start charging it. You can always change your prices if you're not making if you're not charging enough or if your costs are getting too high. And in terms of projecting that, when it comes to financial modeling and the way, one of the awesome things about Silicon Valley and the way they think is it's just like, it's a funnel. How many paying subscribed drivers do you have right now? Right now we have about 50. And so it's like 50 times the cost of their subscription. And that's your current revenue. And then you just, how much do you think you're going to grow? And if you're going to grow positively, then it's okay. Well, then you can financial model that out where it's how many drivers do you have paying each month? What is their cost of what they're paying you? And then you can project that out from there with your growth rates.
So what if you start with no obvious data to back yourself? Like what would the steps look like?
So if you start with no obvious data, that's where I always just think of it's like, well, just like choose something, like choose like $1. Can you charge $1? If $1 is like a silly thing to put on it, then charge $20. And it's like, just keep going, like keep using that like method of like, don't be afraid to like look silly or like fail, because that's going to happen like with everything you do when it comes to startups. So just like embrace that. Enjoy it, because it's when you fail at something, that means that like, hey, you found another thing not to do, and then it will take you in the direction of the things you should have been doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Cool.
You want to talk a little bit about like your current growth strategy, like expanding from Bloomington to Illinois and why you choose to do that, and then how you're dominating each market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Bloomington was like a big one because it's just like, let's get this correct. Let's make sure that like we have enough drivers, we are functioning fluidly. Where my big thing is like, once we leave a market, like let's not go back there. Let's make sure that we can leave a market and it'll function on its own. The biggest thing in terms of growth that we've been trying to create is like a marketing playbook. So for me, it's really important that we know the inputs and the outputs of what our marketing and advertising is. And that's what we were working on really heavily at U of I. U of I isn't at a point of sustainability yet. I was really hoping that we might be able to launch at Purdue when I came and talked to you guys. That was kind of like a blimp on my radar, but that's like obviously not going to happen now because of the students shutting down, or like students not coming back to campus. But that's the biggest thing of our growth, is like understanding, okay, if we put somebody in a market, like if we put somebody tomorrow or in August in Urbana-Champaign, and we told them take 20 Uber rides per day, do $22 pitches, pay a minimum or pay a maximum of $8 per ride. How many, if they did that for a full week, did 100 rides, how many Nomad drivers would we get out of that? And so that, to me, it's like that is part of our growth playbook. And I'm a huge football fan. I grew up playing football and love the Colts, love Notre Dame football, love rooting for the Hoosiers. And it's just like football. I love reading books about NFL coaches. And it's just like, okay, if we can have a stack of a playbook that's literally like, hey, run this play when you get there at this time, and it'll produce X results, then you can know how to grow in a city where you don't know anybody, where you don't have any previous traction with Nomad rides. And at the end of that playbook, once you turn the final page, you'll have a functioning, high functioning marketplace. That would be amazing for our growth. So that's the biggest thing. And we feel like over like the course of the next, like starting in August through the end of that school year, that's something, the first probably 5 campuses, like Purdue will be next on the list after U of I. And so it's like, we're probably going to have to take the company and handhold it at those first 5 campuses or so, maybe even 10 campuses. And just like, so we can understand how that playbook works. And so that's something we're right now, we're like, okay, well, because now is not a time that's very conducive to growth. Let's hunker down and like really understand our strategy and really improve the product. And that way, when August rolls around, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have any like big questions or any questions? Cool. Michael, do you want to go ahead and like get the web version, the app version of Zoom, so then we could start doing like breakout sessions?
Yes, I can go ahead and do that. Cool.
How is everyone doing? Good? That's good. Who's still at Purdue? Right?
I'm doing well. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Who's at Purdue?
Yeah, I'm at Purdue.
Oh. How is the campus like empty?
Yeah, I haven't even been on campus. I mean, I've been back here for like 2 weeks, but I'm just like, there's none of the buildings are open, so been chilling at home.
That makes sense. Are all the restaurants like closed, or are they like takeout?
They're open for takeout.
Mm.
Yeah, you can still get like Uber Eats and stuff too, or delivery.
No. It's crazy. Is anyone going to make the classes pass fail? Oh,
It's tempting.
Yeah, I'm going to do it for my like super hard classes, I think.
Well, I think we can wait until like the end of April, so I guess I'll just see how I'm doing then, and then be like, all right, well, that's a pass fail.
Yeah. Makes sense. Does anyone have any questions on like what I sent earlier this week about like how the boiler is going to proceed over like the next few weeks? No? Okay, cool. Yeah, but just to like summarize, essentially the key thing that in terms of the boiler that I want you guys to be working on is just like filling out that spreadsheet that I created, the boiler cohort information with all the relevant stuff, so then we can send it. Oh, okay. Oh, Ziba.
Cool. So now I can see everyone.
All right,
So
cool.
hi everyone that I didn't get a chance to meet initially.
Yeah, cool. I guess so. The last thing I sort of wanted you to talk about, Michael, before going into like individual breakouts, was just like, sort of share like how you craft that like narrative and like share the story about Nomad, because for the teams, one their big like ending task with the boiler is to like give a presentation, sort of create a deck, have like a good narrative and like one liner for their companies. And I think that Nomad has like a really powerful one, as we talked about like earlier. So if you want to share like the thought process, maybe like what YC taught you, what you've learned so far to help, and then share those like key insights for the teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So YC, a few of their big taglines are build something people want, which sounds like a very like, it's like no duh. But it's like, there's no point in building like a product or anything unless people actually want it. Because if not, you're just building something that like has no real use. The second thing is talk to your users. So like, who are the people like that you're building something for? Like, who are they? Are they college students? Are they older people? Are they people who like to play tennis? Like, what are they, or who are they? And when you know that answer, like, go talk to them. Be like, hey, I'm Michael, and I am trying to build this. Like, is this something you would use? And like, they'll show you if they'll use it by their usership. So those two things are like very important things on understanding like, hey, am I building something in the appropriate manner that will get me to the point of like pitching an investor or whatever who's going to who's going to want to invest or going to be intrigued by your company. And so when it comes to actually like the actual, I think the question was pitching. My biggest thing that I enjoy when it comes to people are pitching their company is like telling a story. Like, tell a story about where you've come, where you failed, like your traction, your growth, all of that good stuff. So,
how did you find out that college campuses were like your biggest target market? Because it seems like Uber and Lyft like gets a lot of business from other groups of people.
Yeah, the biggest thing with that is the viralness of a college campus is unlike a city. Like, it's so unlike a city. Like, adults kind of know what they like, what they do, all that sort of stuff. Where like people in college are way more open to new experiences. They're way more open, like they talk to new people. One of the terms Daniel likes to use is like the velocity of places, where it's like when you're a college student, you maybe go to 3 classes a day, you go to the bar at night, you go get a bite to eat at Chipotle, you go to your sorority house and you eat with your friends there, and you come into contact with all these different people from all these different diverse backgrounds. And so sharing something like Nomad Rides with somebody is like a very no-brainer thing. Whereas in a city, it's like, what do? You wake up, you eat breakfast, you go to work, you go home, you work out, you hang out with your significant other, or you hang out with a friend. So like the velocity of places in a college town and the viralness of something like a Milk Movers or something that's like, and price sensitivity of a college student is way higher than someone in a city.
All right, cool. So any last questions before the breakout sessions? Oh, there's one more question in the chat. Hannah, did you just? Oh no, you asked that. Okay, never mind. Does anyone have any other questions? All right. So what we'll do now, Pete is going to make like breakout rooms where it'll be like Michael and a specific team, and then the schedule is in the Slack, and then it'll be essentially you have like 10 minutes just to talk to Michael about your business, share what you're working on, and then yeah, and then it'll just sort of rotate out for about like an hour or so. Does that sound good? Pete, you know how to make that happen?
Yeah, I think I already sent out I already opened the breakout room, and I don't know if you got the invitation to join. It's the first time we're doing it, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think it worked. Yeah. Okay. So for everyone else, you can like leave the Zoom and come back during your time, or you can just stay like muted just to hear anything. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then David, you said you can't make your 135?
I don't think so. I mean, they didn't arrive yet, but maybe they arrived late. I don't know.
Okay, does anyone want to trade with David for his 135 slot? That is later on.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they come like 140, I mean, I don't know how much time they will need.
All
That's
right,
the
so you
problem.
just don't want to do your session at all?
I mean, I would like to, but I don't know when they are coming. I mean, let's leave it like this, and
Okay.
and see if they come or they don't come. And if they come, then I won't be able to do it. And if they don't come, I will be able to do it. You know how maintenance work.
Okay, so then that sounds good. Then just message in the Slack asking if anyone wants to trade with you if you can't make it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna hop off then.
Okay, I'll go to the meeting with small groups and see if I can do it. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thanks.
See you guys.